Time for focus. It breaks my heart, it makes me shiver. The words of a survivor of last June's suicide attack on a Shiite mosque in Kuwait as he returned to the scene for the first time. The Islamic State group, which regards Shiite Muslims as heretics, claimed responsibility. A week later, Sunni and Shiite Muslims held prayers together in a show of unity. But tensions between Kuwait Sunnis and the sizable Shiite community are on the rise, as Vikram Singh reports.
Close to the financial center of Kuwait City lies the Al-Sadiq Mosque. Last June, a suicide bomber targeted this Shiite place of worship, one of the oldest in the country. Adel al-Nasser was amongst those present. He's returning to the mosque for the first time since the attack.
It's really hurting me to see this. It breaks my heart. It makes me shiver. Where is that pillar?
Adel had come to pray with his 4 sons.
Right here. We were sitting right here.
The Islamic State organization sees Shiites as infidels and has targeted them across the Middle East. The attack killed 26 people and wounded more than 200. And the bloodshed could have been worse.
When it happened, we were praying in prostration, so the shrapnel flew above us. If we had been sitting or standing, I think no one would have made it alive out of this mosque.
Security measures have tightened considerably since then. And prayers are held in a neighboring mosque. Like Adel, the most devout meet there every Friday. This leader of the Shiite community says the threat wasn't taken seriously enough.
I urged all Shiite mosques in our country to take preventative measures, to be very careful. But it was Ramadan, a busy time during which people are focused on fasting and on praying. The Interior Ministry also took some precautions and sent out police cars for our protection. But unfortunately, the threat turned out to be much bigger than the precautions taken.
Shiites make up 1/3 of Kuwait's population. They're well integrated in the country's economic and political life. Yet sometimes clashes erupt. A recent controversy involved a Shiite MP who resigned after a colleague attacked his faith and asked him to correct it. As night falls, we join a group of friends for a barbecue. Some of them didn't want to be identified. Both Shiites and Sunnis have gathered here, and all of them say they're lucky to be Kuwaiti.
Things are good here, especially if you compare to other places in the region, especially Bahrain. It's really unfair what's going on there. Shiites don't have the job opportunities they deserve. Some expatriates are holding really high positions while Bahrainis are stuck at the bottom.
The recent diplomatic crisis between Iran and Saudi Arabia has further complicated the situation for Shiites in the Gulf. We're meeting one of the most influential imams in Kuwait City. Sheikh Hani says that Shiites in the region are increasingly seen as a domestic threat.
They accuse us Shiites of having pledged allegiance to Iran. But we, as people, as a community, we don't belong to Iran. Yes, the religious authorities have studied in schools and centres there. And yes, the Shia follow their authority. But this has nothing to do with Iranian political authority.
Today, Shiites hope the crisis with Iran will not escalate into an open conflict in the region. Memories of past discrimination and sectarian violence during the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s are still fresh.
For more on this, I'm joined now by Hilal Kashan, Professor of Political Science at the American University of Beirut. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, A man we interviewed in Kuwait for the report we just broadcast says things are good here, especially if you compare to other places in the region, especially Bahrain. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, of course. Needless to say, Shiites in Kuwait have been integrated in society and to an extent in the political system, and they play a large role in controlling the country's internal trade. Bahrain is a different and a very sad story. Shiites there form about 70% of the population, yet they are denied basic political and even economic rights.
Now, our reporter says Kuwait's Shiites are well integrated in the country's economic and political life, but aren't they doing better economically than politically?
Yeah, of course, by all means. Remember, Kuwait is not a proper democracy, and the Emir of Kuwait practically controls the political system, and he can dismiss the parliament at will. So whether Shiites are whether Shiite representation is increased in the Kuwaiti political system, to tell you the truth, that would not make much of a difference because this is a heavily centralized political country.
And last week we saw several Shiite lawmakers boycott parliament. This after more than 20 Shiites got prison or death sentences, I understand, for spying for Iran. What does this particular case, do you think, say about sectarian tensions in Kuwait right now?
Well, Kuwait is part of the region, and it is very much affected by what's going on around it, namely the rising tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Therefore, Kuwait cannot really become impervious to the difficulties that arise in the region. Having said that, there are no reasons to assume that tensions in Kuwait would become open and would lead to a much larger conflict. I think things are under control.
Now, like you say, other countries in the region affected by this dispute between Saudi Arabia and Iran, this after the execution of a leading Shiite cleric. Now, how do you see the situation developing? We saw, of course, many countries taking sides. Are there real concerns for Shiites? We heard an imam we interviewed say that they're increasingly seen as a domestic threat. Is that even more the case now with this particular dispute?
To tell you the truth, I do not really see them as a domestic threat. Shiites in the Gulf, namely in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, have legitimate concerns and demands, and their needs have to be accommodated and addressed by the political system. I don't see any evidence that their demands are being sufficiently addressed, neither in Bahrain nor in Saudi Arabia.
Now, just getting back to Kuwait for a moment, to the imam I referred to just a moment ago, he says that Kuwait's politicians have no links to Iran. Is that really the case, or does Iran still have quite a lot of weight and influence on politicians?
Yeah, Iran has spiritual and religious influence. It is incorrect to say that Iran controls Shiites in the Gulf. This is not the case. To a very large degree, Sunni leaders in the Gulf and elsewhere, by discriminating against Shiites, they coerced Shiites in the region to turn to Iran as a source of inspiration. And another thing, in Shiism, the role of the clerical establishment cannot be overemphasized. Shiites practice religion through their sources of imitation, that is the clerical establishment. Arabs have closed Shiite clerical universities and academies. Therefore, they coerce them to turn to Iran for religious education.
Do you think that Iran is sincere when it says that it really doesn't want this dispute with Saudi Arabia to get out of control?
It is true. I don't think it favors or serves the interests of Iran to escalate the situation with Saudi Arabia, especially after the lifting of the sanctions. Iran wants to become part of the international community, and Iran has important domestic and economic issues to deal with, rather than to get involved in an endless conflict with Saudi Arabia. But the Saudis, I must admit, are concerned about Iranian rising star in the region and they feel that the Americans have abandoned them.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your time. Hilal Kashan joining us there from the American University of Beirut. That's it for Focus. That's it from me for now. I'll be back in a few minutes. Stay tuned to France 24.